Hey there, Magic in the Room listeners. Before we get started with today's episode, I wanted to let you know about an opportunity to get a Magic in the Room hat. Yes, you heard me correctly, a free Magic in the Room hat. Well, it's not really free. You have to do a survey first. Go to magicintheroom.com. We have a survey there. Should just take a few minutes. We are looking for information from you about what you like about the podcast, what you wish we would do differently, and would just love to hear any other ideas that you have. So again, magicintheroom.com. Give us some information and feedback. We will mail you a hat. It's going to be awesome. And let's get to today's episode.
Magic is found in every room where people connect over a shared purpose. In this weekly podcast, Luke, Hannah, and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset, and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
Well, howdy there. Welcome to the Magic in the Room podcast. I'm Luke Freeman.
I'm Hannah Bratterud.
And I'm Chris Province. And today, Dr. Bob's back in the house. How are you, Dr. Bob?
I'm well, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being here. So, we've been working through this mindset series, and Dr. Bob Schooley has joined us as we've kind of explored these topics and these domains. And today I'm excited to put it all together as we kind of take what we know about mindset and growth aspects of mindset, and outward aspects of mindset, and kind of bring these things together to talk about what is an igniter mindset. And before we get to that, though, let's venture into some space where maybe we've had to apply some mindset previously. And my question of the day for everyone is, take a minute to brag, and I want to know what's something that you are proud of accomplishing. And it cannot be getting married or having kids. So I'm going to take those things off the table, just like in a workshop, because we don't want 20 people to say the best day of my life was when my kids were born. I understand that, okay? I assume that you like your children. I assume that you like your spouse, or maybe you don't, and it was the day you got divorced was what you're proud of. But anyway, give me something that you are proud of accomplishing.
Okay, I'm going to go with recency here. This isn't a huge thing, but I felt proud of it. So, we bought this house a couple years ago, and it was a bank-owned thing, and we bought it knowing it was going to be lots of projects. But one of the cool things about it is it has a pool. And we're like, okay, when did we ever think we'd own a pool? This is pretty cool. And you kind of go back on Google Earth and look at the history, and you can kind of scroll back by date and look at all the aerial views of the world based on when they took these satellite photos. And you have to go back like years and years to actually see this pool in working condition. So, it's been a while. So it's been a project. But over the last month, I broke up all of the concrete deck, and my boys and I hauled it to a dumpster, and lots of wheelbarrow loads. And then I got a trencher, and I trenched all these lines, or all these trenches around the pool. And then I put in brand new PVC pipes. And so I replumbed the entire pool, from the pump and filter to the jets and the drains in the pool. And I had never done that before. And so watched some YouTube, and don't be too impressed, because PVC is like the perfect project for any moron that wants to try something. It's like, just put enough pipe cement on and hold it together long enough, and you're probably going to be okay. But I know when I finished and started covering all the lines up with sand, I was like, wow, I just replumbed a pool and saved a lot of money instead of hiring someone to do it. So I felt pretty proud of myself. I'll give myself a pat on the back after that one.
Yeah, I know. I got to see that in process, and got to come over and see all the ditches that you had dug, and the PVC pipe winding and bending around the pool. And last I checked, you weren't an aquatic engineer or a plumber. So definitely some application of growth mindset. So I'm interested, what gave you any level of confidence that you might be able to pull that off?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that it's confidence in pulling it off. I think it's a pride thing. Like, why do I need to pay someone to do something that I can figure out? And so I think there's probably a little bit of foolishness involved in like, well, forget this, unless it's completely outside my wheelhouse, I'm going to figure this out. I remember as a kid, like taking apart a motor and cleaning all the parts and putting it back together again. And an engine, motors are electric, so a gas engine. And just thinking, hey, this thing starts and it runs better than before I took it apart. And that's cool. Like, I can do this. I can figure out how things go together. So why would I depend on someone else? I should be smart enough to do it.
All right. So writing down, motors are electric, engines are gas powered. Learn something new today. Check.
Me too.
That's growth mindset in action. Motors are electric.
I'm sure we're going to
Hannah,
get
what
like
about you?
some
Give
sort
me
of
some-
correction. I love that you're just taking what I say as gospel, though. So just keep writing down notes.
That's what I do. Just like the whole thing about like men and dinosaurs didn't cohabitate. Like false narrative. That's the next big big lie. Hannah, what's something you're proud of?
So what I'm actually proud of is that I was able to turn my fixed mindset about athletic ability into a growth mindset. And so when I was 7 years old and I was in the first grade, because in Norway at the time you entered first grade at 7, I decided that I was not an athlete and that it was too late for me to enter any sport because my classmates had started when they were 5. So at 7, I had aged out. It was surely too late. I was not going to be part of the athletic bunch. So I did not enroll in any sports because my fixed 7-year-old mindset told me that I couldn't get good at it because I'd already missed the boat. And then fast forward, 30 years later, I decided to experiment with running. And then last month I ran a half marathon. And not only did I complete the half marathon, I placed really well. And I placed second in my age group out of, I think it was about 30 or so in my age group and 400 people in the race. And I placed about 69. So that only came from a shift in mindset, because the whole possibility of me even running a race like that 10 years earlier did not exist anywhere in my mind. So therefore, it was impossible for me to do it 10 years earlier. But as soon as the possibility entered my mind and I changed my mindset around what I was able to accomplish, the possibility existed and I was able to do it. So that, and at risk of repeating myself, but that's just my ongoing example, is around running. But in this particular case, it's around very much changing from a fixed mindset, like I'm just not good at this. I don't do sports. I don't run. I can't do it. I'm not made for it. I'm not good at it. To I can totally do this. And in fact, I'm going to run farther and faster than I ever thought possible, and continuing that journey now into my mid 40s. Really just starting it, in my early 40s and looking at a trajectory of running, increasing my running ability through the second half of my life.
Bob, what's something you're proud of?
Boy, these are some tough ones to follow. For me, my struggle is with inward versus outward. I tend to be very selfish. but I think I'm very fortunate. I'm surrounded by people that I get to work with, people, my family. Sorry, Chris, I know we weren't supposed to say family, but I really feel like I've got a lot of really good role models around me to help me better understand what outward looks like, what it requires. I have a long way to go. I don't, to be honest with you, I don't know that I'll ever arrive there, but I'm looking forward to the journey. That might be a little bit of my growth aspect kicking in. I feel like I do believe it's something that I can get better at if I'm more intentional, if I continue to lean into my role models and mentors that are around me. So I'd say the accomplishment is just kind of becoming aware of that and recognizing that I need to do more. I need to be better, more outward, and then having people around me that can help me do that. So
let me ask you a question about that, because I mean, if I know most, I mean, I look at your family, Bob, and it is an incredible family. Your brothers, your parents, your nieces and nephews, and it's kind of in the DNA, like this whole growth mindset. And you go across the spectrum of your family, and you find people from all different walks of life, from physicians to entrepreneurs to you educators. It really is pretty remarkable. So it's like there was this habit of growth mindset within your family. And we talk about mindset being this blend of nurture and nature. Who set the tone in your family for growth mindset?
yeah, that's an interesting question. Neither of my parents attended college, but both were crazy smart. My mom literally devoured books. She loved to read, always reading to us. This will tell you how big of a nerd I am, but in the summertime, it was really cool because we would get to ride our bikes to the public library and check out only three. My mom limited it to 3 books that we would take back home. And then she would expect a report on them, just kind of what was the key takeaway? What did you learn from that book? And I think my mom got that from her mom, who also was a big time reader. And it was so cool because my grandparents gave us books for Christmas, and most people would go, "Oh, the books." We loved it, man. And they were very intentional. They picked out books that were age appropriate and had an important lesson associated with them. And then they would ask us for reports back on those books every time we saw them after that. So I think very early in all of our family, and that's true for, great grandchildren in that family. Education and reading have always been something that very, very important and supported.
Yeah. And so how did you, I guess, your finding or the realization, or at what point did you realize you had opportunity to apply your knowledge and care and coming from that place? Like, how did you come to that moment where you said, there's an opportunity for me to be more outward with how I serve?
I know it sounds cheesy and we're not supposed to go there, but I think seeing Susan and I's children, and kind of how they go about life and kind of the relationships they have and kind of their relationship with their children, our grandchildren. It's crazy. I'm just like, wow. I learn a lot from them, and I really admire how they're living and how they go about their lives. And I think are all much more outward than I am. And I don't know, Chris, maybe I'm the perfect negative correlation for them when it comes to that inward outward thing.
I just find it interesting, Bob, because you're someone that's done a lot for a lot of other people. And it just kind of is illustrative. Like, there's always room, like we can celebrate where we are and the stories we've helped write, but there's always opportunity to author the next thing and to grow and move ourselves.
I do think there are certain selected aspects or competencies that are inside outward that, for example, concern for others. I think that that's something that I've had all my life. And that I think is something that comes natural, if you will. So that's always been there. And then I think that coupled with encouragement, I love to encourage people and help them flourish and do great things. So I think I've got a little bit of it in me, but it's still something I definitely need to get better at and will get better at.
Yeah. And I just love like that concern for others. We find that in your purpose, like help all people flourish. And that's, I love how if you anchor back to your purpose, it provides you that resilience, but also that inspiration to continue to move forward.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? That you typically think your purpose would be something that you're good at or one of your strengths, but for me, it's really a challenge statement.
Well, and I don't know that it can't be both, right? That's how I would read it. So, I think I'll go to something I'm proud of. I didn't grow up in a very, I didn't have a very resourced upbringing. I did a lot of, I got my first job when I was 14. I worked through high school and I got to college and I ran for like student government. And it was out of peer pressure. We joke a lot and say marketing works on me. I only landed at OSU by accident anyway. So basically, if anybody says, hey, you should do this, I'm like, okay, it's that high openness thing, right? Which I think is like 99. So like I'm open to just about anything. And somebody said, you should run for student government. Now, I to say my high school grade point average was mediocre is probably an overstatement. I landed in Stillwater by accident. And I'm guessing I fit a demographic profile that they needed at the school. So I ran for student government, and the whole time I was thinking, like, people like me don't get elected to positions like this. But, all I did was show up values forward, like staying bound to what I believe. It was the only thing I could do. That's all I had was like, here's what I believe and here's what I think might be possible. And I was elected to that position. So, it did require me to think about myself differently, that people like me can be elected to positions like that. And it's incumbent upon me to bring my values to that space so that it becomes a place more friendly for other people like me. So that's, a little bit of maybe where I found maybe informed some grit or gave me confidence, from that outcome, some 20, 25 years ago, I guess now. So, so thanks for the exploration. Now that we've shared stories about how growth mindset has shown up in our own life and allowed us to brag today, let's talk about Igniter Mindset. And I want to start by just saying, like, in your own words, what is an Igniter Mindset?
Well, I think just for some background, we've been doing this series and we talked about what is mindset, and then we talked about growth versus fixed mindset on an episode, and then we talked about inward versus outward mindset. And if you layer over those concepts, fixed and growth and inward and outward, you get these kind of 4 different profiles. You get growth mindset, inward and growth and inward mindset. You get growth and outward mindset. You get fixed and inward mindset and fixed and outward mindset. And the Ignitor mindset, in my mind, is when we start to scratch at that outward focus, the outward mindset, and a growth mindset where we believe that our determination and our ability to change is real. And so you kind of combine this really determination to continue to evolve and grow as an individual, and the reason why, which is to make the lives of people around you better or enriched in some way. At least that's my take on it. And that's what we've around here, I guess, at Purpose and Performance Group, have started calling Ignitor Mindset. And so that's kind of the catching everyone up and a little bit of the concept. But what does that mean for me personally? It means that when I'm at my best, I have a label to describe it. When I'm truly seeking to change the world on some level for others and not just seeking to go out there and grow and learn just for my own benefit, I'm exhibiting an Ignitor mindset. And talking to my kids, talking to people that you get to coach, talking to leadership teams. When I talk about an Ignitor mindset, it gives me something very tangible to say. We believe that if we put effort towards something, we can make change. And we're remembering why we put effort towards things. It's because of people.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that. It's this determination of I will be what I am in that fixed environment, or becoming is better than being, and I'll be more than I am today. So that it's that determination, and then for you, it's plus purpose. Is my purpose the acquisition of things and resources for my own benefit, or is my purpose the application of knowledge and resources for the benefit of others? So as I read your interpretation, Luke, it sounds very much like this, what is my determination and what is my purpose orientation, and how that plots out when those things are high growth and outward application, then that yields that Ignitor approach. Hannah, what about you? In your words, what's being an Ignitor all about?
Yeah, and I love the term igniter because of the connotations, right? Somebody who ignites a fire, something that creates a spark, right? Causes something to catch fire. And really the idea of that high growth and high outward orientation, care for others. It's really about impact, right? What kind of impact do we want to have on the world, and how aware are we of the impact that we can have? And I do think when we're able to move into more of a growth mindset and move more outward, we're inevitably going to have more impact because we're aware of our own abilities and skills as they are today, and confident that we can grow and get better than we were. And we're aware of the world around us. And once we have that awareness on both of those axes, we can be intentional about impact. And that's what I think is so powerful about this whole concept of the Ignitor. Dr. Bob, you shared a blog by the Arbinger Institute recently about the 2 different ways of looking at mindset. So growth versus fix really is based on the research of Carol Dweck, and it's really about self-belief, right? What do we believe? Chris, you mentioned people like me, right? I, as a kid, thought about myself as I'm someone who doesn't do sports. I'm someone who's not good at running, right? And that really kept me kind of boxed in and fixed. And then when I changed my mindset to I want to be the kind of person who runs marathons, I was able to do that. But that's because I changed my belief, right? And then the outward versus inward is about our connection with others. So when we believe about ourselves that we have the ability to impact the world and we're able to effectively connect with the outside world, I think that's a really powerful thing.
So it's kind of like this idea of like seeing potential is what I take away from your take. And whether that's like seeing the spark in others or the potential capacity or ability within an organization, and really having the intention and the skills to make that spark a fire and have it rage over whatever it is, whether it's the individual, the team, or the company, like that, seeing it, because after you see it, you can't not do anything about it.
Exactly. And that, back to purpose, that is really what fuels my purpose, which is I look for light. And I mean by that is like, I look for that spark. What is that spark? Right. And try to connect with that and help people bring that out. Right. And that I would, really, if my purpose were to create igniters, I'll sign up for that.
Right. Love it. And shouldn't we all be so lucky? Bob, in your words, how do you describe an igniter?
I tend to think of the igniter mindset as, and I kind of grew up in an environment where, maybe to summarize it, it was prevailing mindset was the sky's the limit. And I heard that a lot when I was a kid, and it was kind of like, hey, work hard, keep your head down. You can accomplish great things. It's all open to us. And then kind of the other kind of major concept in my life was just the concept of family. And it was kind of interesting. I can remember like it was yesterday, and it's probably now been 50 years ago, but just when my definition of family got expanded to, it's not just the people that you're related to, it's everyone around you. It's the people that you go to school with, it's the people that you work with, it's the people in your community. Just when those two things kind of came together for me, with regards to the sky's the limit, and then kind of the bigger definition of family, that to me is kind of like, I think what Igniter's all about, kind of when you have that growth mindset, it's kind of the possibilities are limitless. There's no limit to the possibilities. And then kind of the idea of just, and everybody, all people flourish. I think for me, I can still remember when I read Carol Dweck's work, and that just kind of really opened my eyes. And then I got very fortunate. I got to go to a conference and hear from the Arbinger group when they presented their inward outward. And wow, it was just like when I heard that, it just kind of all started coming together for me.
Listening to you talk, Bob, it just strikes me how much of an optimistic worldview the Igniter mindset describes. And to embrace the mission to be an igniter is almost to say no to cynicism in some ways. I'm curious for Bob or anyone else. I mean, do you see it that way? Do you use the Igniter mindset as a way to be intentional in not becoming a cynic whenever we face challenges in life?
Yeah, I think that's a great call out, Luke. I've always been a glass half full kind of person, and the environment I was in was like that as well. Um, and just, kind of going to another assessment, kind of with the Strength Finder, one of my strengths is just to be able to, see the greatness in every person. Every person's got a contribution or something they bring to the table. And I love either helping people find that or learning more about it. I love to hear people's stories and then how we might be able to help them on their journey.
Yeah, and I think, Luke, I'm with you, and what I would, I guess I'll just go there. Like it is like I would encourage any leader to read the book of James and think about taming of the tongue, and to think about what Bob just said about how we treat one another. And then there's just not a lot of room in the Igniter mindset to speak about other people poorly or not treat other people as if they're family. And I think in that way, it makes it so easy to be generous. And, to speak to Bob's takeaway, like it is a matter of perspective. Am I living my life for me, or am I living my life for other people? And there's a pretty easy litmus test. If you were living your life for other people, would it look different? Like, when was the last time you gave till it hurt? Where you were truly sacrificing for the good of someone else. And, like connecting that way, I think it flushes out the cynicism if we just follow the moral fibers that is our code. That's, and there's 100 different reasons why that's the right thing to do. Like, even if it's not in the book, it's still where I come from. It's still what my mama taught me. So there's 1,000 different reasons why there's not room for cynicism. And it's why, like, so much of social media is just, it can pull us all in. It gets us spun up. It gets the tongues going about other people. Our alleged public servants are out there talking bad about one another, not modeling the way. So, like, it's incumbent on people like us. People like us create the conversation and hopefully create organizations that aren't okay with it, that aren't okay with cynicism. Like, how do you, on one hand, embrace the power of positive potential and then allow cynicism within your teams and organizations? Like, it's horribly misaligned, and it's probably why the performance is low. So, Luke, I'll get off my soapbox, but I guess that's probably the answer you were looking for.
We all have a choice as leaders on if we're going to go with the flow, let the systems that we're a part of dictate our behavior, or if we are going to take the reins and do something different. And to your point, there's a lot of systems and a lot of flow that takes leaders the wrong direction. And I think if you find yourself feeling like a cynic and acting like a cynic, Igniter Mindset for me it gives me words to pull myself out of that. And my hope is that the leaders that we work with can have the same courage and the same determination.
Luke, that reminds me a little bit of we had some windshield time, and you were sharing, and we were talking about everybody has some trauma in their life, and that really kind of opened my eyes, when you said that, because I think for me, just kind of being aware of people can go through some really challenging, difficult things where I kind of feel like, man, I just kind of got a pass, or I kind of skated through all of that. My son Ryan talks about the Schooley bubble. It's kind of like we were inside this bubble, and it was like It's a Wonderful Life. Like, it's just like, wow. But when you said that about people going through trauma, and it's something that they have to process through their entire life, that really got me thinking more about how important it is for the people around them to come to them, and to lift them up and help, or give them the space that they need, kind of given where they are. So I really appreciate you sharing that, and that just kind of opened my eyes to being more, that again, I need to be more outward. I need to understand that, some of us are dealing with some really difficult things, and it's important to either support or give space, or just kind of be present and be available.
Well, and to kind of let the cat out of the bag here, we really, as we started thinking about the work on mindset, and that is, cultivating mindset is one of the 3 tenets of what we do: build structures, cultivate mindset, and establish teams full of accountability. So as we got into this idea, we started thinking, well, how do we assess someone's propensity, or where they're at, as it relates to growth and outward mindset? So, we've been working on this idea of how do we assess for the Igniter mindset? And as a result of that, we've had to really dive into what are the competencies, or what are the domains that create an Igniter mindset. So I thought, for the listeners, Bob, would you mind just running through the technicals of, what are our concerns when we're assessing or screening for this type of mindset?
Yeah, for Igniter, it's kind of interesting that we've talked about growth and outward. With growth, some of the key competencies are continuous learning, which is kind of a little bit of a no-brainer, if you will. But just somebody that's got, they're on a quest. Their whole life is dedicated to kind of learning more, developing, continuing to develop. Innovation is a nice marker as far as growth is concerned, because innovation, just by its very nature, involves, growth, disruption, change, development, and then a kind of problem solving. Someone with a growth mindset, they are drawn to problems and trying to help solve those. So it's kind of interesting. There's others that are just as important, but I think those 3 are kind of some really kind of telltale traits of somebody that's got a growth mindset. And then if we flip over to the outward side of the house, key competencies there are citizenship. And that's kind of an old-fashioned word, but it's kind of interesting. It's similar to engagement. But someone is connected to their community, and then cooperation and concern for others tend to be kind of important competencies when it comes to an outward mindset.
So if we're innovative and we solve problems, high concern for others, good citizens, we're at least getting down the path. I know there's other domains in there, but it's been what's the experience been like, Bob, to try to put together a technical assessment of something that is super personal and is so impactful to organizations and teams?
Yeah, well, this is what I think we're about 18 months into this conversation, and I love it. It's great. There's been a lot of good challenges. We're taking a long, hard look. We've got some great help. But it's been, I guess the word I would use would be fascinating. Just kind of because, I really believe a lot of our mindset is kind of in our subconscious. We don't even know that the impact or the influence it has on our life. And I think that can be life changing when you start to kind of understand that. I think the fancy word for that is metacognition. When you start thinking about the way you think, it's crazy. I mean, for me, it was eye opening. Why do I react? Why do I behave? Why do I respond in a certain way? And, we talk a lot about system 1 and system 2, and a lot of my behavior, a lot of my reactions are definitely system 1. And many of them, often it's very inappropriate. It's not the way I should be responding. So I think for me, this has been a journey to where I'm trying to, before I act, respond, behave, say something, I really try to do a little systems 2 thinking. And I know that drives you crazy, Chris, because you'll ask me a question and it'll take me 2 or 3 days before I can get back to you with an answer.
You said a little systems 2 thinking.
Yeah, I have to. Well, I've shared it with the group. I'm definitely an introvert, and I do tend to overcook or overthink things. But
it's been, you kind of label as fascinating. I think it's been hugely important, and I've really enjoyed, kind of being part of the team that's building this, and because this mindset, the idea of it is so much a blend of our nature and nurture. But it has so much impact on our attitude and our effort and ultimately the results that we achieve. And I think that's why just starting with that baseline of awareness is, hey, here's how I know I'm wired. Now let me get out of my wiring and actually think about what it is I'm about to action or say.
And I love that, Chris, because, the results of the assessment, and I think we've all experienced this firsthand, they can be a little hard when you first see those results, and you kind of go, ugh. But that also, to me, awareness is probably 70% of the solution. Now, don't get me wrong, that last 30% is pretty hard and pretty challenging. I think it, trying to kind of counter or understand what your mindset is and being able to make adjustments, that's can be challenging, heavy lifting, but it'll be one of the biggest challenges you ever take, but it'll also be one of the most important and perhaps life-changing.
Bob, it's great that you said that awareness is 70% of the solution, and I couldn't agree more. That's why we're going to label all the quadrants. So we'll look at, in another episode, we'll take a look at what happens when I'm high growth but strongly inward. What happens when I'm strongly outward but have a fixed approach. And we'll explore, how those particular profiles show up, and, what are some different coaching techniques when we're working with people that are in those profiles. So, but we'll save that for another day. What I'd like to finish up today with is maybe some discussion around why is it important for organizations to care about having Igniter mindsets amongst their team.
I think it's important for organizations to have awareness of this, back to our kind of initial discussion of what is the Igniter mindset and why does it matter, right? These are the individuals that can really move the needle for an organization. If you think of it in terms of impact, that we talked a little bit about earlier, if you want an organization that has a high impact on the world, you would be well served to develop igniters within your organization. And to some extent, I think we can screen for some of these mindsets, and that's part of some of these assessment tools that we're developing. And if we truly believe that someone can move from a fixed to an outward or a fixed to a growth mindset, and we can move from an inward to more of an outward orientation. I think as leaders, one of our biggest responsibilities is to take that development aspect into consideration, right? How do we set expectations that will help to move people into a growth mindset? And this was one of the calls from Dr. Dweck for teachers, right? Teachers and parents, starting with children, how we talk about our children, how we praise them, how we, what we reward, what kind of behaviors and attitudes that we reward impacts what kind of mindset they develop. But I do believe that's possible for adults as well. As in my example, as an adult, I have continued to develop more of a growth mindset, and I'm constantly working to expand my awareness to become more outward oriented. And so that is, I think, a big call for organizations when it comes to people development, to create the environment that will nudge people in the direction of being more growth oriented, more outward oriented.
Yeah, and I don't think we should be under the illusion that we can create teams in large organizations where everyone, exemplifies an Ignitor mindset. Let's be honest, the folks who do that are far and few in between. And so as leaders and as organizations, the more intentional we are to kind of increase the number of Igniters on our team and to build organizations that are both an Igniter magnet and an Igniter factory, the more outcomes we're going to see that align with our purpose. And this is where purpose-driven organizations, I think, win, is that they do attract people who are willing, who one, don't just think about themselves, and also are willing to do hard things to change the world and advance a cause. And so, when we look at why we would want to do an assessment like this, it tells an organization where they are as far as mindset goes, and also provides some tips on what would we do if we were going to become more of an Igniter factory and become more of an Igniter magnet. So I'm really excited about upcoming episodes talking about, coaching tips for people, for my own self-development and self-development of leaders who listen, but also to think about how does a leadership team for an organization, or how does a leader, really start to talk to people about becoming igniters and embracing that mindset.
It's someday, we're going to have to grow to scale where we have to run assessments, or, I'm just so excited to try some of these ideas and these concepts and see how they play out in the market. Because I can tell you, if I was an operator, if I owned a business that was in hospitality or banking or retail or anything that was people differentiated, I would screen for camaraderie, and then I would develop leaders to have an Igniter mindset. And at the very least, create awareness of what it is and where our eyes and efforts are supposed to be. I think if we allow people onto our teams that don't have a propensity for camaraderie, then it takes away or discounts our ability to create igniters. So in my utopia organization that's yet to be named at XYZ Corp, we screen for camaraderie and we develop leaders to have an Igniter mindset. And I think those businesses have a real opportunity to change the entire ecosystem and change the cynical conversations that happen within our communities or what we see in public space. Like that's where things come alive. And I think that's where we have to look, for really good things to happen going forward.
I love what you just said, and it kind of made me think a little bit of when you think of like organizational culture. I can remember a day when you had a group of senior leaders would go do some offsite retreat, and they'd come down from the mountaintop and they'd have, here's our 5 or 6 core values that are going to define our culture. And it's kind of fascinating. We found out that that does not work. That's, culture doesn't come from the top down. It comes from the bottom up. And so now we're seeing kind of a more and more where people are looking at, okay, the people that we hire, what values do they bring into the organization with them? And, if you get enough of a certain type of value, you get to a tipping point to where that, the tipping point for those team members basically becomes an organizational value. And Chris, I share your excitement about this. I'm kind of like, I'm jumping out of bed in the morning to go do this. I'm looking forward to helping organizations kind of do the same thing with mindset. And that's going to take a little bit of discovery. There's a discovery process in that. But I think once you are aware of your mindset, and then as an organization, you can start to, and I love what Luke just said about being purpose driven. Having a purpose is going to draw certain type of mindset. It's going to be attractive to people that have certain inward, outward, fixed growth, whatever it might be. And just kind of understanding that dynamic and trying to perhaps get in front of it. And I love the word Hannah just used with regards to nudging. If we can just nudge it a little bit, that it could do some amazing things for organizations. So really looking forward to seeing how mindset, how we can use that to help organizations create and nurture purpose-driven cultures.
Yeah, Bob, thank you for that. That is meaningful work, and I look forward to doing that with a lot of our client partners. But that's Hannah, Luke, you guys sing us out of here. What are your final thoughts for today?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to we get to choose cynicism, or we get to choose being an igniter. And every day that I wake up and try and ignite some sort of change for the good of the people around me is a day well lived. The more intention I can bring to that, the more clarity around my purpose, the better. And just really excited about this tool to help people become aware and be more intentional, to wake up and do the same thing. I think if we get enough of us, some really cool things can happen. So really excited about what's coming.
Yeah, I'll have to echo that. And every day that I get to do that with people like all of you, who I consider igniters and an inspiration to do the kind of work that we do and that I do, that helps me fulfill my purpose, and it's incredibly valuable. And just being able to connect to our partners and our clients and the people we work with on a daily basis to help spark some fires and some conversations and some thought around these topics. Very valuable.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Hannah, it's a great way to sign us off. I love the idea of, creating that light, fueling the fire, letting the best of everyone emerge. So great exploration of Ignitor Mindset. Thank you all very much, and look forward to putting labels on this thing and talking about some technique and some categories next time we get together. Bob's cringing, but it'll be fun. Thank you guys. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.